This is Outnumbered. I'm Sandra Smith. Here today, you just saw her, Harris Faulkner. She's here, host of Kennedy on Fox Business. That's Kennedy. Radio talk show host Meghan McCain is here, and today's #OneLuckyGuy. The editor-in-chief and managing editor of the Wall Street Journal, Jerry Baker, is here, and he is outnumbered. Welcome to the couch, sir. It's good to have you for the first time.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm making my debut, so thank you, yes.
Yay. Where are your expectations? You're a big fan of the show, I must assume.
Very high expectations. I've seen so many men come on this show and be treated so well with and to struggle so much with so much surrounded by all this intelligence and elegance and everything else. So I'm terrified.
Gary. Let me just tell you, you're off to a very good start.
I'm terrified. It only gets worse from here, unfortunately.
Oh boy. All right, well, let's start on that note with the race for the White House. Both candidates touting their performance in their first debate as they ramp up their attacks on each other. Donald Trump reviving his nickname for Hillary after stops today in Chicago and yesterday in the battleground state of Florida.
Almost every single poll had us winning the debate against crooked Hillary Clinton. Big league. Big league. But I watched her and she was stuck in the past. For 90 minutes, on issue after issue, Hillary Clinton defended the terrible status quo. Well, I laid out our plan, all of us together, to bring jobs, security, and prosperity back to the American people. The only thing she succeeded at is helping her donors and covering up her crimes.
Meantime, Hillary Clinton is in New Hampshire today, appearing to take a victory lap, as she tore into Trump for saying it would be smart if he didn't pay any taxes. Listen.
Did anybody see that debate last night? Oh, yes. One down, two to go. Well, I'm going to leave it to the fact checkers to go through all of Donald Trump's claims. There was a lot of work for fact checkers last night. He actually bragged about gaming the system to get out of paying his fair share of taxes. He said that makes him smart. Now, if not paying taxes makes him smart, what does that make all the rest of us?
All right. Well, sounding very confident there, Hillary Clinton. Jerry Baker, I'll remind our audience that you yourself are a presidential debate moderator. You moderated the fourth GOP debate.
Just once. They never invited me back.
Oh, well, you did a great job, and I worked with you on that debate.
Did you.
But what did you make of the performance? Just get that out there first.
I mean, I think it was, I think as people have said, Donald Trump came in very well, came in strong, came out, clearly loaded for bear. So did she. So that first half an hour I thought was a very even debate, and I thought Trump landed a few blows. I think he did then, I think his lack of preparation, to be honest, showed after that. I think this is what people have said. Our own reporting has said he doesn't do a lot of preparation. In fact, he boasted to people beforehand about, I'm going to go in there, you can over-prepare, you need to be relaxed. And I think, to be honest with you, on some of those issues, when he got a little bit, he started to say some rather strange things. The 400-pound hacker on the bed was probably the most interesting and still, to me, completely incomprehensible moment of the night. So I think he lost his way a little bit there, to be honest with you, and I think he did give a few hostages to fortunes, and this issue about tax is fascinating, right?
So based on that, who would you say won?
I'm sorry, I'm going to dodge the question, do the ultimate dodge the question. I should be a politician, I suppose, really, rather than a journalist, but I don't think you could say who won the debate, because I think they both, I don't think, and we'll have to see what the polls say when we get them, the ones that have been taken after the debate. I don't think this is going to move the needle all that much. I think they both kind of did what they had to do. Donald Trump had to go out there and reassure people that they could see him as president of the United States. And as I say, with the exception of a couple of odd remarks, he basically did that. Hillary went out there and I think, placed a lot of doubts in people's minds about Donald Trump and what he would do. So I'd be surprised if there's a big shift in the polls as a result.
Can I ask you about some of your your own reporting? Because I know that the Wall Street Journal, along with, I believe it was NBC, did some polls about what people really care about. These are likely voters and what they say they care about. And one thing that really stuck out, I mean, they spent an inordinate amount of time talking about Donald Trump's taxes, but in your own reporting, it only amounted to about 6% of what people say is their biggest concern about him, or even their biggest concern overall.
I think that's right. Now, again, she tried to make a big deal out of it. The question is, you're absolutely right. That's what our poll said. It was negligible. People weren't concerned about the issue of his taxes.
So why even go there?
Because so the question. This is going to be an interesting question. And again, we were reporting on this today. Do people look? Nobody likes the IRS. Okay, nobody likes having to pay taxes.
Well, you got me there.
Everybody tries to pay as little tax as they can, right? Within the law. That's called, legitimate tax avoidance, and that's fine. Everybody gets that.
I love that phrase.
We're using
legitimate tax avoidance as opposed to tax evasion, which is illegal. But so that's a legitimate thing to do. People reduce your taxes as much as you can. The question is whether or not people will feel that someone with Donald Trump's wealth has an obligation to. I mean, if it turns out, and we still don't really know this. I mean, we know that in several years, as Hillary pointed out in the debate, several years way in the past, he didn't pay any federal taxes. If it turns out that the reason he's not disclosing his tax returns is that he hasn't paid any federal taxes in recent years, how does that work? Do people say, good for him, I wouldn't want to pay taxes either? Or do they say, he earned hundreds of millions of dollars a year and he's not paying any taxes? And by the way, he's complaining about the state of infrastructure and the state of the roads and, the treatment of our veterans and all of that. Again, I genuinely don't know. I think he believes, and some of his people believe, people are going to say, this is what business does. This is what a good business person does. They find a way to pay as little tax as possible. They, make sure that they're spending their money and investing their money on things.
And he did use that line a couple of times, Kennedy.
Yeah,
that's
but I think Jerry makes a better case than Donald Trump did the other night, which, he said that's smart, but I think this is where he kind of fell flat. He has to say why it's smart.
Make the case.
He has to follow up on that logical chain, and as she's trying to point out this double standard, that would have been a perfect moment for him to pivot. And I'm sure he's watching the tape from the debate. I'm sure he's analyzing and seeing how he could do things differently. But that would have been a perfect moment for him to say, oh, really? A double standard? You mean like the one with you and your email server and the FBI and the Department of Justice?
Right.
The one that no other American citizen would have been afforded because anyone else, especially our brave men and women in uniform, if they had committed the same acts, they'd be in prison.
That was an amazing moment, wasn't it, Megan, where he was given the opportunity to then talk about her emails, but he brought it back then to his own taxes. Megan, do you think that Donald Trump changes his strategy? As she said, 1 down, 2 to go.
He should. And again, there was one of the people in Benghazi and the family members. The fact that Benghazi wasn't brought up at all, the fact that her email scandal wasn't brought up at all, the fact they didn't get policy specific about ISIS, which I was really enraged about. This is one of the more underwhelming debates, I think, of my adult life. And when I saw both of their spin, especially Hillary Clinton's, when she's like, 1 down, 2 to go, I'm like, who are you kidding? You are losing with more money, more infrastructure, and more legacy to someone by a few points. It's in a statistical tie. Neither of them should be getting cocky. Neither of them should be getting too far ahead of themselves because, quite frankly, I mean, you're being nicer than I am. I thought they both completely blew an opportunity to win over new voters.
Okay. Well, and he's continuing to blow an opportunity because he's off topic. He's off message.
And look, I think this preparation thing is important, and he does, and they are, from what I understand, his people are saying to him, you've got to prepare for the next debate. It reminds me, there's a lovely story, Arnold Palmer, who died this week, great golfer. He was once asked by an interviewer, a rather sort of cheeky interviewer, who said, you're a great golfer and you win a lot of tournaments, but doesn't a lot of it really come down, the difference between winning and losing, a lot of it comes down to luck? And Arnold Palmer paused and said, yeah, you're right. And he said, you know what? The harder I practice, the luckier I get. And, that's such an important lesson. We all know that. If you can't go into things unprepared. And as good as you are on your feet, and Trump clearly is, and as good as he's been at building his business and communicating in the way that he does with, just basically winging it, you can't go into an hour and a half in front of 90 million people without having properly prepared. Because exactly as Megan says, he missed those opportunities. Because unfortunately the moderator didn't ask the questions, and that's another question.
We could have guessed that.
But he should have had, because he did not. They should have been able to talk about immigration. He should have been talking about the Clinton Foundation.
What about her health?
The Clinton Foundation.
That was another one of those issues, though, in the Wall Street Journal poll that people said that they weren't particularly caring about. But I would say this again. I double down with the statement. We're a day plus away from the debate. It's time to get back on message. And he had a rally earlier today and has started to kind of do that with the police talk and crime and order and crime, law and order. But again, missed opportunity coming right out of the gates to stay focused on. Not all was lost. You have two more.
Yeah, no, I think his narrative about the debate has sort of changed a bit. If you remember on the night, he was asked how it went. He said great, and he was asked about the moderator, and he said I thought he was great. And then he tweeted yesterday morning, actually, the moderator didn't ask fair questions, and my microphone wasn't working properly. So, the story did seem to change a little bit as he seemed obviously to absorb some of the criticism that he took. But I agree with you; they've got to get back on track. You know, they've got another 12 days before the next debate. He's got to get back to the issues. Look, for Trump, it's pretty simple, actually, and the lesson of the last few weeks when he's closed the gap in the polls is very clear. The more he talks about change, the desire the country has for change, and the economy, the better he does. If he gets sidetracked into birtherism or, some of these other issues, people start to think, what is this guy talking about?
Sidetracked with unsatisfactory answers.
Right.
All right. Well, we've got more to get to. The FBI director on the hot seat on Capitol Hill for a second day, getting grilled about why Hillary Clinton's former chief of staff, Cheryl Mills, and 4 others were granted immunity in the email probe. What, if anything, is being kept from voters? After the show, you can join our live chat by clicking the Overtime tab at foxnews.com/outnumbered or go to facebook.com/outnumberedfnc. And, of course, you can tweet us. We will see you there after the show. Tweet us questions for Jerry Baker, editor-in-chief of the Wall Street Journal.
It is day 2 for FBI Director James Comey taking questions on Capitol Hill about the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. He testified before a Senate committee yesterday on why immunity was granted to her former chief of staff, Cheryl Mills, along with several other people. He said it has to do with speeding up the investigation and that it's typical for how they do things. But today, the House Judiciary Committee is taking a deeper look at that.
Doesn't it concern you as an investigator that your chiefs in the Justice Department decided to become an immunity-producing machine for many people who would have been very key witnesses should there have been a prosecution?
I don't think of it that way. Doesn't strike me there was a lot of immunity issued in this case.
There seems to be different strokes for different folks on this, and that's what Americans are concerned about. I don't think your answers are satisfactory at all, Mr. Comey. I do have a great deal of respect for you, but I think that there's a heavy hand coming from someplace else.
And then we're watching this too. The House is expected to vote this week on a resolution holding former Clinton IT aide Brian Pagliano in contempt of Congress for failing to show up at a hearing on the emails. Let's bring in Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge now with more. Hey, Catherine.
Well, thank you, Harris. In many ways, the hearing today was a turning point. For a couple of months now, privately, we've been hearing from Republicans that they have deep concerns about the integrity of the investigation, the FBI director's leadership, and whether there were, in fact, special rules for Clinton and her team. And today, that spilled out into the open.
We, as Congress and the American people, are troubled how such gross negligence is not punished, and why there seems to be a different standard for the politically well-connected, particularly if your name is Clinton.
The focus today largely was on the 5 individuals who received limited immunity deals from the Justice Department as part of the FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton's email practices. One is a former State Department employee who silenced critics within the department who questioned her email practices. 2 are IT specialists, including one who destroyed records, and 2 others were Clinton aides. There was a special focus this morning on Clinton's former chief of staff, Cheryl Mills. And what we learned today is that her immunity agreement was much broader than originally reported and extended to the destruction of records.
Isn't there a double standard that when you granted immunity to these 5 individuals, you took them out of the reach of prosecution for crimes committed related to destruction of documents or withholding or other crimes pursuant to congressional subpoenas?
I don't think anybody was given transactional immunity.
Oh, really?
Democrats, without exception, tried to help FBI Director Comey make the case that this was all about politics.
I think that the mud that is being thrown from the other side of this table here continually, only because of the ongoing presidential election, in the case in which the FBI decided there was nothing to prosecute, it's over. And we all know nobody would be even talking about it if if Hillary Clinton weren't a presidential candidate. This is pure political maneuvering.
You can call us wrong, but don't call us weasels. We are not weasels. We are honest people. And we did this in that way. Whether you disagree or agree with the result, this was done the way you would want it to be done.
We've been covering the email case here at Fox News for the better part of a year and a half. And coming out of the hearing today, there were a couple of instances of new information which makes it hard not to come to the conclusion that FBI investigators essentially turned a blind eye to this information because two of the individuals who got these immunity deals did lie to FBI investigators in the course of their inquiry, Harris.
Catherine Herridge, I'm taking notes on what you just said on that new info. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. We'll get that in on the conversation. So, and that was where I was going to start. I know you've got a little dog at home called Whiskey. And
he's not little.
He's not.
He's about 70
I know that
pounds.
when he's a 70-pound puppy. When they run around and they kind of try to figure out how the world works, they kind of chase their tails. And some of the criticism for Republicans has been that they haven't gotten anywhere with this.
Yeah.
But now there's new information again coming out of this, and consistently there has been.
Listen, if just listening to Catherine Herridge's reporting there, you're extremely uneasy with what is going on, and that, quite frankly, it hasn't hurt Hillary Clinton that much. And I know that you are constantly asking your readers and your subscribers, what are the most important issues in this election? Why is it, Jerry Baker, that this is not at the top of voters' lists when deciding whether or not to vote for Hillary Clinton as president? Why has this not hurt her more? Obviously, her trustworthiness numbers, this does show up.
I think it has hurt. I think that's the answer, Sandra. I think it has hurt. It is a core reason why she has the highest numbers for untrustworthiness that we've seen certainly for a Democratic nominee. She's why she's disliked. It's why she's distrusted. This pattern of behavior that people see of someone who dissembles, who covers up, who appears to never be straight and honest, I think that's been an important role. Now, I think that said, I think there is also a sense, I think she almost benefits from kind of scandal fatigue, because people have been hearing about this stuff for 25 years, going back to Whitewater, you know, and right the way through the Clinton administration, the Bill Clinton administration, right the way through some of the stuff she did, certainly when, you know, when she was Secretary of State. And it's like, what's new? You know, I kind of know this. I know what's new about this. What are you telling me that's new about? And I think people have made up, a lot of people have made up their minds, and they don't trust her. Her partisans think it's all just Republicans attacking her and the usual thing, and actually they've been doing it for 25 years, and, you know, it never seems to stick, so they kind of get away with it. And they do brazen it out. And, you know, they tough it out.
And this is what Gary Johnson referred to today in the New York Times in his op-ed as hyper-partisanship. And I think it's what people get sick of. And, you know, as Naylor points out, yes, you know, this is in part very politicized, but that doesn't mean that she's free from these accusations or wrongdoing. I
think Clintons have done a very good job of making it seem like it's just politics, right? So every time, so whether it's Benghazi and the Benghazi hearings, the famous ones, whether it is these emails, whether it's stuff over the foundation, again, going back to the 90s and Whitewater and Vince Foster and all the other things that this whole sort of trail of stuff that runs behind the Clintons, they've just done a very good job of making people think, oh, it's just politics. It's just one side saying one thing, the other side saying something else. I can't get my head around.
Breaking news breaking in now. Let's cover this because this is what we were watching. The 9/11 bill. Would the Senate vote to override the president? Did they have the votes to do it? And what we're watching right now is a live event on the floor there on Capitol Hill. They do have the votes to override the presidential veto. Now, remember, the House will take this up later this week. Should this continue to play out like this, though, this is history making. And, Jerry, I'm really glad you're on the couch because I know that you at the Wall Street Journal have been watching very closely what's unfolding here. It's more than just the fact that these 9/11 families have not been able, according to the president, should not be able to sue countries like Saudi Arabia or other suspected participants money-wise in terror at the very least. But it is the perception that the government doesn't have our backs.
That's very true, Harrison. I think it is a historic moment. I think this is the first presidential veto override that we're seeing in action. The Senate's going to do it. We'll see if the House presumably has the votes. It looks like it should do, which tells you a couple of things, by the way. First of all, remember that Republicans only have a simple majority in both the House and Senate, not the 2/3 that's necessary to override a veto. So a significant number of Democrats are breaking party ranks, breaking with the president to override this. So that's a very important and historic event, and by the way, something that is bipartisan, which we don't often get in this country. And secondly, yeah, exactly as you say, Harris, this is, and the reason they're doing that is that people feel disgusted, really, that for a long time, first of all, the information about Saudi Arabia's role, or the role of Saudi Arabian citizens in the attacks of 9/11 was kept secret. There was, and by the way, there is still stuff that's redacted.
Those
in
28 pages still didn't tell us everything.
Exactly, but a lot of it was kept secret for a very long time. More of it has come out, and the more we know, the more legal liability there does seem to be, and it's perfectly reasonable for people to be able to go out and sue them.
Megan, as we have been talking about this for weeks on the couch, as we've gotten to this point now where the president voted against this, he vetoed that bill, and then now the override by the Senate, the House comes later this week. For those just joining us, that's what's playing out on the screen. The pushback and the way that they had hoped to bring some of those Democrats on board was by making it look like that we would be just open season for everybody to then begin to sue us over our drone usage, so on and so forth. You had very strong thoughts about
Yeah, I very rarely agree with the president, but I actually agreed with him on this. I worry what precedent this is going to set. If a drone strike accidentally kills some innocent people in Afghanistan, are they going to be able to sue our country? I do worry about the floodgates opening and what this could mean for the United States. And we have had, I believe it's called sovereign unity, that you can't sue a foreign country and they can't sue us. And I just think, again, this is history making. This is changing. This will change how wars are governed. Apparently, Afghanistan can sue us. We can sue Iraq. Iraq can sue us, and it's just, it makes me uncomfortable.
So then
not that I don't have compassion for the victims of 9/11, obviously.
With you, Kennedy, because what do you say to those families who have wanted to have that legal recourse?
Oh, I have great compassion for them, and they're absolutely right. And I think that the current administration and past administrations, plural, need to stop shielding Saudi Arabia. I think it's offensive to the memories of those who perished on 9/11. You know, the helpless victims who were trapped in those buildings and at the Pentagon and in Pennsylvania. And there's a reason that this is a bipartisan effort, because we've seen the shielding, cross party lines. And you know what? I also have compassion for people in other countries who are victims of our drone program. And maybe we need to rethink that as well.
So just to reiterate that, so while we're still watching the screen, the vote is still technically open, but 67 yeses so far, no votes so far in this. But Megan, to your point, it was Ambassador John Bolton and U.S. Attorney Michael Mukasey who wrote that op-ed just last month, saying an errant drone strike that kills non-combatants in Afghanistan could easily trigger lawsuits demanding that U.S. military or intelligence personnel be hauled into foreign courts.
Yeah, and this
he has been warning against this for quite some time.
A very emotional issue for anyone. I mean, all New Yorkers, I live near the Trade Center. It's a reminder every day. It's not that I don't have compassion for these families, but I also have compassion for the men and women who serve in the military that could possibly be held legally culpable for, things that happen in war, which are ugly and sometimes controversial. And yes, there are things that I don't agree with when it comes to this administration and the way that they've handled things in Afghanistan and Iraq. But it's opening a floodgate that I agree with the ambassador I'm not comfortable with.
Yeah, it's interesting the difference in perspectives between you and Kennedy.
We agree on nothing
part of it,
foreign policy.
No, you do agree on, you care about those families.
That's true.
It's just how do you get to the point where you have adjudication that benefits them and you don't open up our nation to lawsuits. It's what they're fighting about on Capitol Hill right now, so we'll continue to cover it. Hillary Clinton is leaning more on the Obamas to win the White House than ever, as the first couple is pulling out all the stops for the Democratic nominee. Will it help her or hurt her? How would that happen? We'll talk about it.
Hillary will be a president our kids can look up to, a president who believes in our kids and will fight for them every day. That's why I believe in her.
That is First Lady Michelle Obama, featured front and center in a new Hillary Clinton campaign ad. It's the latest in a string of examples of Clinton apparently leaning more and more on the first family to win the White House. And right now, Mrs. Obama stumping for Hillary in the crucial swing state of Pennsylvania, first in Philadelphia and later on in Pittsburgh. This comes just a day after President Obama attended a Clinton fundraiser in Washington, D.C., and then issued an urgent appeal to her supporters, asking for donations as the race enters its final weeks. So, Jerry, you know, we'd heard for so long about acrimony between the Clintons and the Obamas. What happened that allowed them to bury this rift and move forward so she can secure his legacy?
It's absolutely crucial for President Obama that Hillary Clinton gets elected precisely for the reason you say, Kennedy, which is that that's the way to preserve his legacy. Imagine if, after 8 years of President Obama, we get a President Trump with everything that President Trump will stand for. It will be a repudiation of everything that President Obama has done and what he stood for and what his administration has stood for. So it's real, and so it's not just about specific policies like Obamacare, which will obviously have to be revised in some way anyway, or the broad economic policies that they followed. It is about the legacy, the historical legacy of President Obama, which he wants to preserve and protect, and Hillary is his only choice for that.
And Michelle Obama, I thought, was the most effective speaker at the DNC. And I think that she may be Hillary's best surrogate because her husband has lost a step. He says wacky things on the campaign trail. The president, when he goes out, he only wants to talk about himself and his legacy. When he was speaking to African Americans, he said, you know, I will take it as a personal favor for me and my legacy if you vote for her, why not? But Michelle Obama seems to be more gracious and selfless.
Yeah, Carl Bernstein has a line in his new article out on this where he says if Hillary wins, it's because Obama's dragging her over the finish line. And I think that tells you everything you need to know. And Michelle Obama's approval ratings and popularity is still enormously high around the country. And I think even Republicans, to an extent, at least have a respect level for our First Lady. And this is the only card Hillary has to play. Yeah. They're warm and likable. It shows in their approval ratings. She is not. And I think this is all they've got at this point. But Obama's saying this could ruin my legacy. I take it as a personal insult, especially to African-American voters. Says a lot, because you're right. If Trump gets elected, it really is sort of a reverse on everything that Obama claims to be representing.
And think about those numbers. You're absolutely right, Megan. 59%, that's Hillary's disapproval rating. That's her negative ratings. Michelle Obama, it's like 25, 15. The president, 40. You know, they are liked. And exactly as Megan said, even Republicans, I think, have a lot of respect for Mrs. Obama. And actually, for the first family, whatever they think of their policies, they think they're a good, decent family. So to have them out there, in contrast to that, let's be honest, somewhat less appealing.
Is there any downside here, Sandra?
Well, it reminded me of the Colin Powell email leak and of all the wonderful things that we learned about Hillary Clinton, her thoughts on the Obamas there. So when you watch all of this and you watch Michelle Obama, as authentic and genuine as she looks, it does stay in the back of your mind that that rift is still there, and this is not all good and nice between the two families. So I don't know if the American voter looks at that and can really take that to heart, knowing the things that they have continued to say about each other.
Yeah, and I think people distinguish between Michelle Obama and how they respect her and Hillary Clinton, and frankly the views they have of her. I don't think it makes people think, oh yeah, if Michelle Obama likes her, then I must too.
There's even a distinguishing element between Michelle Obama and Barack Obama with regard to this. Remember, he pulled her onto the trail too.
Yeah, very much.
He needed her too. And she was kind of they used to call her the secret weapon, kind of behind the scenes politically. Obviously not.
And you know, she's come a long way, because if you remember in the 2008 campaign, there was that moment, a couple of moments, most famously and notoriously, when she said her husband's election was the first time she'd ever felt proud to be an American. That was a very, very damaging and very ill-thought-out thing to say. She's dramatically, you know,
she's worked on her branding
dramatically improved,
and she's been able to do that across 2 terms for her husband without making any sort of policy. So she can kind of do that. She can go on the cover of this and the cover of that and talk about mom and momhood and all that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. She has all the visibility with a lot less politics tied in with that. So,
which I would think on the campaign trail, you saw the scrum of reporters and photographers. They're not asking her policy questions about Hillary Clinton. And in fact, isn't it interesting that at the debate the other night, did we count how many times Obamacare came up? Did we need one for that?
It was 0.
Did we need Yeah,
I don't think need one finger. Yeah, and
right?
there was that very touching moment of the weekend too, and this again is why Michelle Obama wins people's hearts with George W. Bush. I mean, that was an incredibly powerful moment. Reminded people that there is a bipartisanship and that she is a warm, decent, good human being. People like that. So if that brings some of that to Hillary,
she also sees what George W. Bush has done in retirement, and that fills her with great optimism that she soon will be on a ranch painting portraits. All right. Well, as the candidates increasingly focus on crime and police tactics, new FBI data shows a big spike in the number of murders nationwide. But the White House says Americans are safer than they have been in decades. So why don't residents in some cities, like Chicago, the president's hometown, feel that way? Stay with us.
Growing concerns about our safety as the presidential candidates grapple over crime numbers and controversies with police tactics. The FBI just released new crime statistics showing the number of murders nationwide jumped by nearly 11% last year, particularly in some of our nation's largest cities. Violent crime overall increased about 4% in that same time period, with higher numbers of rapes, robberies, and aggravated assaults. We do note this: there was a drop in property crime, burglaries, and larcenies. But the White House is downplaying all the stats, saying Americans are actually safer now.
Since President Obama took office in 2009, the violent crime rate in the United States has fallen 15%. And the violent crime rate in the United States is near historic lows. The country is safer under President Obama than it has been under previous presidents, as measured by the violent crime rate. But the president believes there's more that we can and should do.
Jerry, what do you think about this? I mean, are we at the point where we're focused on the right issues here?
Yeah, very much. I mean, look, violent crime in particular, has been declining in this country, thankfully, for 25 years. I mean, we're in New York City. You can tell from my accent, I'm not from here. I came from England, but I've lived in this country.
I would have guessed Jersey.
Thank you very much. But I've lived in this country for more than 20 years. I was here in the late 1980s. Crime was rampant in New York. There were something like 2,000 murders in New York City in the late 1980s a year. Now those crime numbers are way, way down, which is great. But in the last year, and that's been a trend for 25 years. In the last year, we saw with these latest numbers, it has started to tick up again. Violent crime, murder rates, especially in some of America's most largest cities outside New York. There are a number of explanations. I do think that policing has become more conservative as a result of some of the stuff that we've seen in the last 2 years. I just think there has been, you had an end to stop and frisk in New York City. You have had a lot of this Black Lives Matter, anti-police protests. I think that has, made police forces more cautious about going in. Maybe they've reduced some of those problems that they've had.
They're talking about de-escalating. Changing policies for de-escalation.
The crime rate in Chicago is just Chicago's out of control. And by the way, it's not in, this is the tragedy, it's not in the wealthy, the affluent.
It doesn't matter. It's affecting them just as much.
It is in, I know you're from, it's in the poor African American, Hispanic communities, and they are the ones who are really suffering here.
I just got back from Chicago yesterday, and it's all anybody's talking about. And we're Chicago. Murders are up 16% last year. Total violent crime rose by 2.5%. And this is despite everything that they're trying to do on gun control. Rahm Emanuel taking all these measures, just announced new ones. Nothing's working, but you don't hear the president talking about that. And it is an extremely uncomfortable situation in that city right now, and you just aren't hearing any solutions for it.
Can I ask you, because Sandra, last week I brought to our team an article from Chicago that talked about this de-escalation program that they're going to try out, and how they're going to try to have police kind of pull back in certain instances. If people are that fearful, and we know it's happening on the streets, dozens of people getting killed each weekend, why isn't there a national program coming from the White House? If there is, maybe we don't know about it.
I don't know that that's exactly what you would want to push for. I mean, Kennedy's going to probably tell you that that's the worst idea you can possibly come up with.
They're not getting it done at the local level, so what do we do?
Well, in some places they are, and I think you need to learn from the police departments.
Right.
Well, Chicago is also hamstrung by unions and acrimony between the mayor
guns.
There are fewer guns, but maybe there's a correlation there as well. And we can look at some of the research in concealed carry states, and where people are able to defend themselves, they feel better when they can preserve their lives and that of their families, and you don't have that that sense in a place like Chicago, because when good people can't defend themselves, you know, there's a proliferation for bad people out there.
But I will tell you, though, that just getting back there and talking to the people in that great city, when you all of a sudden hear the White House say things like that, there's such a disconnect, and it puts the White House, it makes them look so out of touch. When you're actually living in it, and then you hear them talk like that in Washington, out of touch.
They do that on everything.
But they have to
They do that on unemployment.
It's the president's hometown. If this were happening in Phoenix, Arizona, it would be wildly embarrassing for my father. And the idea that race riots are spiraling out of control. What I was watching, what happened in North Carolina, which isn't the first time this has happened over the weekend. I mean, it's inconceivable that this type of thing is happening in the United States of America, and people don't feel safe, especially African-American men. And that's something that we have our first black president, and they're not dealing with, as you said, Harris.
I sat with Reverend Jackson last week, and he threw some criticism the president's way. He says he has different priorities, and we can all make a judgment of what that would be just based on what he's doing right now and what we've seen him do after certain.
Get on the ground there. Spend some time there.
All right, we'll move on. After their bitter primary battle, Hillary Clinton set to be reunited with Bernie Sanders on the campaign trail. Listen for it, it's coming. Clinton is hoping her former rival can gin up support from millennial voters. But why a recent poll could spell trouble.
Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders set to appear together on the campaign trail at the University of New Hampshire as Clinton tries to stop the bleeding of support among millennial voters. They'll reportedly talk about the issue of student loan debt. So I want to start with you, Jerry. When he was at the convention, I jokingly said he looks like he would rather get a root canal than be sitting here right now watching Hillary Clinton talk about him. Of all the interesting details, he's not sharing his email list with Clinton supporters, which is a very big deal because it's outreach. How genuine is this?
So, first of all, there's a lovely, for those who appreciate gentle irony, there is something nice and ironic about the 74-year-old Bernie Sanders and the 68-year-old Hillary Clinton going out in pursuit of millennial voters. Good luck to them. They'll chase them down the street. I think I don't know where my money is on that contest. But it's a really important point, Megan. Her biggest, frankly, her Achilles heel, her biggest weakness in this campaign is that she is not getting the support of millennials. The last poll we had millennial voters, those between 18 and 30 essentially. She was only getting just a little over a third of those voters. Barack Obama got 60% of those voters in 2012. They're splitting. Some of them are for Donald Trump. A lot of them are going to Gary Johnson and to Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate. She desperately needs those. Of course, Bernie Sanders got those supporters in droves during the primary, so she needs him, as you say, he's not sharing his email list, but she at least needs him to be out there urging his supporters, and those younger voters love Bernie Sanders, urging those supporters to go and transfer their support to Hillary Clinton. So far, they just haven't sealed the deal, and that is the biggest weakness that she has in her entire campaign.
Yeah, I would say it's very important that he get that information out, that he's not sharing everything with her. Because, I mean, can you imagine being a Bernie Sanders supporter and what we saw on the convention floor and all that fervor and all that emotion was about a man who bucked the establishment. And now he's carrying its purse.
Yeah, and you know what? This is a group of people that are fiercely independent. They are politically agnostic, and they don't want to be told who to vote for. And, you know, his supporters, only 43% of them trust Hillary Clinton. That's a very low number. And I don't think, you know, this is going to do much to endear them to him, which is what he's trying to do. He's trying to solidify his own legacy. And, you know, after the debate, it just makes Gary Johnson and Jill Stein more attractive anti-establishment candidates to this generation.
But, Megan, let me flip the question on to you. How important is global warming to millennials? It came up in the debate the other night. Hillary Clinton said Donald Trump thinks it's a farce, or I don't know the exact word that she used, and he said, I certainly do not, but they have pushed him on that in the past, saying that he's not a believer in global warming. But apparently Bernie Sanders said the other day he's going to hit hard on tuition and draw a stark contrast between Trump and Hillary Clinton on global warming for millennials.
Yeah, statistically, I know global warming doesn't even hit the top 10 with Americans and what their priorities are, and you can.
But millennials.
But with millennials in general, I think it's the student loan stuff that really hits hard at the heart of everything, even though I think it's irrational and completely out of the realm of possibility of logic, some of Bernie Sanders' proposals. I just don't. I think if I were a Bernie Sanders supporter and I knew that he wasn't sharing his email list, that signifies a lot. I'll go out, I'll stump for you because I need to do it for the good of the party, because I hate Trump more, but I'm not going to share all my core supporters and send out emails on behalf of you to millions.
That information should start every speech. message with that line so that people know. Otherwise, I think they'll lose faith.
Maybe Bernie Sanders won't share the email list with Hillary because he figures she'll delete all the emails. and he'll never get them back when he wants to run again when he's 78. So.
It's very valuable in campaigns. It's one of the most valuable things you can have. Anyway, all right, more Outnumbered in just a minute.
Many thanks to Jerry Baker, a first-timer on the couch today.
Thank you very much.
Editor-in-Chief of the Wall Street Journal. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
How was it, by the way?
Well, as we were just saying, I have 5 daughters, 5 beautiful, smart American daughters, so it's just like being at home, really.
Oh.
With one missing.
You're used to being outnumbered. Great to have you. Thanks for joining us today. All right, keep it right here. We are going to be doing Outnumbered Overtime on the web, and you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/outnumberedfnc. That's it for us. Happening Now starts right now.